All right. Welcome back, everyone, on this Tuesday evening to Get the Mic. This is the show where your hosts, Owl on the left,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect fiction and try to derive the mythological meaning therein. Today, we're talking about Dragon Ball as usual. We will talk about other things eventually. I promise.
We do have
Promise.
plans.
We do have plans. But today we're talking about Dragon Ball, and specifically an episode which we actually just recently discovered is filler, but isn't actually filler. There's a lot of meaning there, and I think the primary reason to say off the bat, and we'll come back to this, I think, over and over in the episode, is that the spirit of what the context of the story and the content of the story in this episode is such that it actually still supports the spirit of the show, even though it's not canon or in the manga.
Oh, it's great. It definitely shows some level of awareness of mythological thought. It's really woven into this, and it's like a firm foundation for a lot of what we're talking about. It's like, oh hey, you remember whenever you made this analogy about this character's appearance? Let's drive the point home, right?
Mhm.
And it happens here in this filler, so most people think that it's an arbitrary thing. It's like that's the funny part of Dragon Ball. It's somehow now the least arbitrary part of the analysis.
Right, and it always tends to be that way.
Hmm.
We get to episodes that we think are going to be innocuous and have actually a lot to say. Any other housekeeping stuff before we get started? I think we missed last Sunday, which I don't know if we talked about. But
Oh,
we'll be on this Sunday as normal. Last Sunday was just an anomaly.
we just had a slight scheduling error, but we're good.
Fair enough. Then let's go ahead and get into the episode. So it starts off with a kind of a recap of what we saw. And remember, in the last episode, Goku was after the flying fortress of Pilaf, and behind him was Colonel Silver, all chasing after the Dragon Ball, who has flown away with a bird.
Right.
I don't think we spoke about
I
that
don't know
last
if
time.
we discussed that at the end of the episode.
It wasn't as significant as it is for this episode, so I
Right.
kind of wanted to save it.
That's good. It really sets up what's happening in the story here because it's in the bird's nest and they fly away whenever he shoots the shopkeeper, right? And it's sort of this I like how the bird always tends towards the symbol of the logos, and it carries it off, and it's like, okay, you need to elevate yourself, elevate your gaze to understand what the wisdom of the Dragon Ball
Well,
represents.
let's say, right.
Can give you.
Well, let's say the modus operandi of Silver is such that it's subordinate to the idea of Dragon Balls themselves. And so immediately nature herself seems to literally raise the bar on what can suffice to capture this Dragon Ball.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's a good point there. Now, what about, there's a couple other things we should mention. So we see Red tracking the Dragon Balls back in the home base. Kind of a little bit significant to know that he's still pulling the strings here. We're going to kind of see him mitigate his command to other people later. But as far as we know right now, he's still in charge. And I think part of that is probably because of the filler. But there's some plot inconsistencies that are just like I would say Silver is subordinate, that are subordinate to the spirit of the story that they're accompanying.
Oh yeah, well that's part of the whole analysis, right? Is as we kind of get into those contrivances, we're like, oh wait, this that serves a different spirit, and so it seems actually more relevant.
Mm-hmm. And so the announcer asks if we'll find the Dragon Ball and we'll figure out about the army. So basically we're back at the end of the last episode, but just wanted to kind of recap there.
Mm-hmm. Sets the stage.
Yes. And so the next thing we see is Goku confronting Pilaf yet again outside of his floating castle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we talked about the floating castle a bit last time. We talked about how it's kind of the castle on the clouds, the castle of dreams, pure fiction, let's say.
Projected fantasy of status.
Yes. And so Goku can meet him up there because he's on the way, right?
Right.
He is one who is on the path to achieve dreams. So
He's the
obviously,
thing that this base is imitating. Right.
yes. And so he can pass by that pretty easily. And so he knocks on the window and Pilaf's there and Pilaf opens the window and flies out.
He immediately falls out, just like Oolong whenever he ran away from Goku before.
Right. And whenever when he unturned from a rocket, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
This is kind of a macrocosm of that,
neither
right?
they're both Ikari, let's say, at
Mhm.
that point, subject to their own fallacy, their ego's fallacy.
Yeah.
And so
It's that puer aeternus, right?
yes. And so that he falls out and Goku has to save him, and at first he doesn't want to help Goku, and then he's like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm going to die, so I guess I'll help you, Goku."
And so he lies
And
because
we
he knows he
know
doesn't have the real Dragon
Yeah,
Ball.
and we know from the last episode, because the Dragon Ball broke in the last episode with the Pilaf gang, we know that Goku doesn't know that. And so we see back the Pilaf gangs trying to piece it back together, right? His
Mhm.
separated masculine and feminine are trying to piece this sacred globe back together.
Well, I think it's important too here that it can't be Pilaf that has the Dragon Ball again, right? It's like Goku's confronting, saying, "Do you have the wisdom for me?" And Pilaf's like, I can try to do the same thing for you." And it's just this fake pieced together imitation of the wisdom, right?
Well, it's an imitation of an imitation. This thing
Yeah.
wasn't even real to begin with.
And so the wisdom is not here for Goku, right? And we've said this before, but we don't see the same thing beat Goku twice. So like we're establishing here that this wisdom, Goku's above it now. He's above this power level. And so all that Pilaf, his base could throw at Goku is now a gag. It's what he falls out of whenever
It's
Goku
also just
confronts him.
deceit, which is Pilaf's really only weapon, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gives it to Goku, and Goku immediately knows something's not quite right, and I think that matched up rather well. And so they fly off to find the real Dragon Ball, which is still being flown with the bird, and leave Goku behind. Now Goku drops in the midst of this, drops the ball,
Mm-hmm.
tries to catch it again, and it shatters. He realizes that it's also fake.
Right. So he was immediately going to know, and it's that comical irony of the foolish antagonist where he tries to burn off, sort of like leave Goku in the dust, and by doing it reveals how fake the wisdom really is, right?
Well, yeah, and it's that idea, that disintegration. The further you disintegrate yourself,
Yeah.
the worse it's gonna be, and it reveals his own weakness. Let's say.
Yeah, the running away reveals it, right?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, did we last episode we mentioned what these false Dragon Balls were? That fake wisdom, right? That is.
We might have.
Did we?
Maybe not. But I think that that's definitely the way to look at it, because this is a continuation of what we saw in the previous episode, right? Where you're not getting the wisdom from doing the same thing over again. You see Bulma and Yamcha blown back whenever they can't integrate and go above the same challenge, right? You can't do this. And the same reason that Namu couldn't do the same thing over again and get the wisdom, right? What the water represented. And
Yeah,
now we
so
see that with Goku's interaction with Pilaf, right? He's already transcended this.
right, but is this that same that wisdom? Because I thought I really was under the impression, because Pilaf buys this thing, right, with a lot of money.
Just fake wisdom, yeah.
Yeah, it's to say that wisdom, it can't be bought, right? It's above that, and even in that scenario, it's on the roof of that building. It's above. It's funny too, because the shopkeeper reaches to the top shelf, let's say, and so he's got that archetypal inclination is there, but it's even above that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's false wisdom that he has, and that's able to trick Goku, but it shatters as soon as that false wisdom is understood or brought to light or faced with truth, the truth that Pilaf runs, right?
Yeah, that he's still cowardly, that he's still
And that this wisdom was not earned.
yeah, it's unearned through his ego sense, right? The reason that he got this false wisdom, right, is his arrogant commitment to his ego, and so it's like this. You can think of the person who thinks that maybe they're a good person because they're smart. It's like he's convinced himself that he's so high in ego, in that egotistical sense, and it's his downfall because that's what tricks him about the value of what he's getting, because he's just like he's immediately taken advantage of by the shopkeeper knowing that about him.
Right, he's taken advantage of. When we did
Mm-hmm.
mention that.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, that's exactly what the foolish adversary is someone who can be taken advantage of. I mean, think about it in Honest John and Pinocchio, right? He's taken advantage of to trick boys into going to Pleasure
Mm-hmm.
Island. It's the same idea. And so he's easily tricked by a more malevolent force than he. I would say the shopkeeper's even more, because the shopkeeper gets serious
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the last
I
episode.
mean, he pulls his piece out.
I mean, he's ready to go. Like,
Yeah.
really, not like Pilaf, like actually.
Yeah.
And
He has a bite to him, whereas Pilaf is all bark.
of course, he can manipulate Pilaf. And so, like we were saying, then. Oh, okay. So then we shift over to Mount Frypan.
Yeah, I think this is when it starts transitioning to it. And
Oh yes, and so the Pilaf and the gangs continue hunting the Dragon Balls. The Red Ribbon Army's hot on their trail, and we then cut to Mount Frypan.
right, do we cut through the boulder or do we cut through
The boulder hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, okay. So, and I think that also Goku at this point is now on his search. So everybody's searching for it, right? And then we immediately cut to Frypan. Reintroduced to Ox King and Chi Chi. What's up, Austin Wood?
What's up? Let's go. So yeah, reintroduce Ox King and Chi Chi and kind of that society, right?
Mhm.
Where that society is back. And the first thing we see Ox do is what? Slay a dragon and bring back the
Exactly, yeah.
Dionysian nourishment to the town.
Yeah, this is a redemption for Ox King, right? It's the opposite of what he was doing before with Fire Mountain. And so we're seeing now that society has been set right through you could say, the restoration of sight to the societal father.
Yes.
I think that's essentially what we're getting introduced to here. I don't remember the order of the episode. I think then we see Chi Chi talking to herself about missing Goku so much. She's like, my heart throbs for Goku. When will I see him again? It just so happens to be that she's thinking about him, right?
Right. It's kind of that serendipitous idea, right? And so it seems to coincide. Their paths seem to coincide again because of the Dragon Ball. Last time it's because of Dragon Ball, right? This time,
Mhm.
same reason. It's because that wisdom is somewhere Goku needs to go. And where does Goku need to go? But with that female counterpart, right?
Yes, he needs to. It's interesting in this episode what happens with him, because it's this reintegration of the two of them where it's like it's almost like they need to be on the same level. They need to be on the same page every now and then and align so that the hero uh can overcome some shortcoming that he has, or so
Well,
that he can
also
progress on his path, so to speak.
so that Chi Chi's a worthy partner for the hero. Let's say,
Well,
because it's not just
she
someone.
needs to integrate the wisdom that Goku has as well, right?
Right, and well, also, yeah, I would say she needs to integrate that, but she also needs to, fulfill what she thinks is her role, right, which is to get married to Goku and thrive in the society that she and her father have created as societal father and societal daughter. Let's
Well,
say
you could say that her job as the societal daughter is to find the hero and make him the successor to the kingdom, to the
by by enlightening the hero, right?
Yeah.
Like we've seen already before. So, this is just another extrapolation of it. Like
Mhm.
Brock said earlier, it's hitting you over the head with the lessons that we've learned, but it is told out in a little different way. But there's some more analysis as well as we continue to go.
It definitely progresses as we get into it.
So then they start having the wedding. Oh, okay. So then Pilaf shows up. That's right. So then Pilaf, the bird is in Mount Frypan, I suppose, right?
Mhm.
And that's why they're all there. And so, oh, it was eaten by that thing, that monster, right?
It was
That
eaten by the
Ox
dragon,
King,
right?
yes. So it was eaten by the dragon that Ox King kills,
Mhm.
and so that's what they're eating at the wedding feast. And Pilaf shows up, and
Well, it's great because
they decide, yes.
as they're approaching, they see a
Oh, this
big
is what it is. Yeah.
celebration because Ox King has a conversation about Chi Chi or with Chi Chi about what her role is going to be. I don't want to skip over that because she's there's this really fast exchange that they have. I wish I had written it down, but there's an escalation as soon as he talks to her. He's like she mentions that she misses Goku and then they divine that Goku is going to be coming
Yes,
with
that's what the old woman.
the
Yeah.
old woman, and then he says,
Oh.
"Oh, it must mean that you're gonna get married," and just immediately, it's like they're playing out their jobs, right? Also, as his job, he needs to be able to recognize the qualities in the hero
And sir,
for the kingdom,
right,
right?
and serve as the, let's say, in society serves as like the benefit, or should, let's say, that's what the story is telling us, at least that society should serve as a facilitator of the bonding between the masculine and the feminine heroic forces.
hmm
Would
and
you?
they're both heroic. I mean, we're seeing that in this episode coming up because there's.
Definitely.
I think Toriyama really wants to drive the point home that these are both spirits to be contended with, right? That there's a heroic nature to the feminine
Well,
spirit.
remember, Toriyama didn't write this episode.
Well, that's true,
I guess maybe he did.
but it
It's not in the
integrates
manga. That's all I
it
know.
integrates really well to explain what's going on in the background with Goku and Chi Chi, right?
Yeah, I agree. And so that, I know that you wanted to say that little exchange they have, and how I think Ox King says that he has to prepare the nuptials, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all that. And it's actually pretty humorous because it's the societal father being so anxious to facilitate
Mm-hmm.
the bonding of the two that it's kind of jumping
Well,
the
and it's
gun, let's say. I
happening.
mean, they're still kids.
Well, it's happening now too because he set society in order, and that's when this can happen, right? That's what
And so it's
precedes.
ripe for it,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
and we see that ripeness of that opportunity
And
in this episode.
I believe too, the narrator says that been a peaceful village since the events
Mm-hmm.
of Fire Mountain, right?
Yes.
Right. And so Pilaf is the first thing that they've seen that's,
So yeah, as they know that now, they're celebrating and they're
yeah.
awaiting his approach, and they make a big sign and they're like, "Welcome, Son Goku," and they say something about celebrating a wedding, I think, on the sign too. And so Pilaf comes flying up because he's tracking the Dragon Ball, and he sees the sign, and he comes up with another Pilaf level plan.
Yes, he has Shu dress up as Goku.
That's
He has
so poignant.
his separated masculine, which is not fulfilled at all,
Mhm.
try to emulate the hero.
Right. But it's funny because his impression of Goku is very shadow oriented, right? He's had to contend with the Uzeiru, and he's to him he's like, "Oh, I have to have that bestial side represent Goku." And so you can think of this as symbolically Pilaf trying to imitate Goku. And this is the best he can muster is Shu. And it is funny and poignant in that way because it reveals Pilaf for how foolish he really is.
And I think Ox King asks who Pilaf and Mai are, and they're like, "We're his friends." It's just a half baked. It's a foolish adversarial
Mhm.
plan, very foolish, very adversarial, but just very foolish. Like this is probably not going to work. So
But we know what that precedes.
we do know what that precedes, and just when we thought it was over, Oh wait, no, they have dinner first, I guess.
He calls forth the food.
Yes, he calls forth the food, the nourishment, and the Dragon Ball they're in because there's a Dragon Ball in one of them. Also, yeah, we want to mention that this gag is actually played out multiple times where Ox King pats Goku in parentheses on the back,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna talk about this in just a second. But he pats him on the back and he sends him flying, and it's funny because obviously Shu's spirit can't even hold up, can't even stand up
Mm-hmm.
in the eyes of the societal father. And if this was the old Guimo, let's say, he would like peer through them and just kill them,
Yeah.
see right through them. But at this point, it's the gag that actually makes his head like fall off, and they have to turn it around. It's a peel off level scheme.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Goku just wandering around looking. Well, he's tracking the Dragon Ball, but he gets hungry,
Mm-hmm.
and so he flies down into an apple tree. And who does he see? Chi Chi
Right.
next to the stream.
Standing next to the water, right? And she's picking flowers for him. So it's it's interesting that this moment didn't stand out to me more the first time I watched it because it's so funny to think of Goku hanging out in the apple tree and he's just chowing down Son Wukong style and he looks out at the water and sees Chi Chi, right? He falls down or he jumps down out of the tree and he's got apples in his shirt, right? Is it when he jumps down? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's got these apples in his shirt and it makes it look like he's got boobs, which is hilarious thinking of what he does because he takes one out and he's like, "Oh, here you go, Chi-Chi. You want an apple?" Right? And he hands her an apple and it's like this sweet moment where she eats the apple and it's like sparkling water all around them, right? And then it
Well,
sort
it's
of
that sparkling brilliance that comes together
mhm.
when the two are joined in that way. Let's say.
But this is also sort of it's a reenactment of Goku bringing that wisdom to her that he's gotten from the story thus far, right? And it's almost like a sort of ironic play on the Eve giving the apple, and we see that played out that not her masculinity, but how the hero is in ways subordinate to the feminine aspects that Chi Chi has. Whenever she pats him the same way, right? She pats him the same way that the Ox King Pat's shoe and it just slams him, right?
Right, and that's because that's self-consciousness, right?
Mhm.
Women make men self-conscious. It
Yeah.
happens in Tom Sawyer, for example. And so the fact that women do that is what can knock Goku, or that's his weakness, right? It's
Mhm.
also why the first person to grab Goku's tail is Chi-Chi, is
Is
because
Chi-Chi.
that's the self-consciousness, right?
Mhm.
And so they get together, and Pilaf gang are still trying to fool the Ox King. Then we do get what comes after the foolish adversary, which is the actual spirit of the adversary, and that is the Red Ribbon Army. They're easily able to overcome society
Mhm.
because they're ideologically possessed, let's say, right?
Yes, they're attacking the idea of society itself right now. And when you do that, you blind the societal father, right?
Yes.
They blind and bind him, right? And this moment is so great to me because it drives the nail into the coffin on what we were talking about before with the design of the Ox King and the gaze of the societal father. It's like how do you disrupt the peaceful society that's balanced? You blind and bind the societal father.
Yes, and you disrupt the ceremonies which keep society together, which
Exactly.
weddings are one of them, let's say. And so the Red Ribbon Army is able to easily take out the Ox King, and it's that to represent that spirit, that drive can and has overcome societies in the past.
Yeah, I love that analog there because what we're looking at is the this level of malice is able to blind the societal father, right? And we're ascending these hierarchies. We keep talking about that, taking the ideas and then shifting them up in sort of a hierarchical mythological scale. And it makes you want to ask the question, what kind of malice could blind the spiritual father?
And we'll see.
and we'll see.
Don't want to get too ahead of ourselves.
Mhm. But I love that we're setting that up here, right? As a
Yes,
motif,
definitely.
because it's important.
It is. And we're going to see it repeat and carry over to different hierarchies. And it's not just powering up, and
Yeah.
it's not just screaming. And I don't know how many times I'm going to
It's
say it.
it's symbolic.
It is. And so the last couple things we see Pilaf run off with the Dragon Ball into his castle in the clouds, while the Red Ribbon Army gives chase. Goku calls Keen Tone to ride upon, and he gets Chi-Chi. Right, he brings Chi-Chi back, and we're gonna continue that with next episode, I suppose. This is the end of the episode. It's kind of a
Yeah, it
cliff.
kind of lit.
But what's gonna
Yeah.
happen? What'll happen? We don't know.
There's no way to know what's going to happen after this.
But I actually do really like the how it unfolds in the next episode.
I love how complex the plot is getting now. As all these, it's like we've been introduced to a lot of different concepts, and now we're really pitting them up against each other.
Yeah,
putting them
that's
in the
what
same
the
space.
Red Ribbon
Yeah.
Army is about.
Yeah,
It's like a microcosm of the whole show. Red Ribbon Army arc, one of the best arcs for sure. And so, right, Pilaf runs away. We said that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that kind of sums up this episode. The wedding itself and the disruption of the ceremony.
hmm
I think that it's a very important part to mention again. It's what can blind that societal father is that debasing, right? And that can be done with chaos, which is introduced by the army.
Well, yeah, there's a sort of tyrannical attack upon the union, right? And you see that in societies that are spiritually devolving, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could say you could compare that to Russia, China, this attack on the family, subverting the authority of the family hierarchy.
You
right?
could even say the French Revolution. So yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think that brings us to kind of a neat close here.
Mm-hmm.
In the next episode, we're gonna see how Goku, the hero, might be able to resolve this. What's gonna happen with the Red Ribbon Army? Will Pilaf escape? Find out next time on Get the Mic. This was episode 31, Wedding Plans. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, give us a like, ring the bell icon for notifications. We're glad to see so many of you guys viewed today. Let's try and keep it up.
If you've got
let's keep it up.
You got any thoughts on what we're saying? If you agree, disagree, let
please
us
use
know.
the chat. If you can't, put in the comments. All that good stuff.
And
I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brok.
Have a good night, everyone.
In my head, how could he be a Super Saiyan when I, the Prince of all Saiyans, could not? I decided to continue my training in the solitude of space. When a violent electrical storm erupted in the skies of the planet I was on, I welcomed it. Like it was an outward manifestation of the storm that was raging inside of me. I was determined to survive.